So Hillary Clinton went on Morning Joe, and after an extended monologue of Joe Scarborough warning about the illicit history of campus radicalism, here is Hillary Clinton condescending, as she's not usually known to do. It's a very, very, a rare thing for her to come off as
humble woman.
Yeah, she's a very humble woman normally. But I think what happened is I think she got gassed up. I think Morning Joe, I think Scarborough pumped her up there. And she's like, you know what? I'm feeling a little bit of wind at my back. So let's lecture these students.
She also, you can see on her upper arm an estrogen patch. So she was probably feeling her oats that day.
Exactly. So let's hear Hillary Clinton condescend to campus protesters.
Wow, I don't know where to start, Joe, but you
go ahead.
Yeah, okay.
I need help.
I want to make a couple of quick points because you raised, things that need to be vented about. First of all, I have had many conversations, as you have had, with a lot of young people over the last many months now.
I've been screamed at by many young people over these past 5 or 6 months. She's gotten protested a lot, and good for them. But yes, she's had a lot of conversations with a lot of Ivy League students and wannabe Hitlers coming up who look up to her.
Don't know very much at all about the history of the Middle East, or frankly about history in many areas of the world, including in our own country. But with respect to the Middle East, they don't know that under the bringing together of the Israelis and the Palestinians by my husband, the then Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, the then head of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, then the Palestinian Authority, Yasser Arafat. An offer was made to the Palestinians for a state on 96% of the existing territory occupied by the Palestinians, with 4% of Israel to be given to reach 100% of the amount of territory that was hoped for. And this offer was made, and if Yasser Arafat had accepted it, there would have been a Palestinian state now for about 24 years. It's one of the great tragedies of history that he was unable to say yes. My husband has a book coming out later this year, Joe, in which he talks about how Arafat kept saying he intended to agree, he wanted to agree, but he was, as you rightly point out.
It's nice to know that you guys are ready to cash in on this with a book, right? Clinton's always up for a payday, right?
Yeah. Actually, the Israelis withdrew from this process, but I'm sure it's not going to say that in Bill Clinton's book.
Right. Right. This is all a rewriting of history of sorts, as Mika's father explained to Joe some years ago, right? But then she gets to another point about the faculty and the teachers and the responsibility of academia. Let's let this play another minute.
Pretty sure he'd be killed because, Sadat was killed by extremists when he made peace with Israel. Our dear, dear friend, Yitzhak Rabin, was killed by a radical Israeli when he was pursuing the two-state solution. So this is a very important piece of history to understand if you're going to take any kind of position with respect to what's going on right now. And there's
so just a very cynical muddying of the waters. What the kids know is what they need to know, which is that 2/3 of deaths in Gaza are women and children, and they know that Israel is an occupying army and that their occupations are in violation of international law. All of this gobbledygook is to muddy the waters and give these kids the idea that they don't know enough about this ultra complicated topic to be opining. And it's bullshit. It's bullshit.
Well, that's the Elon Poppy line, right?
Right.
The greatest propaganda Israel ever achieved was convincing people this is complicated. It's not very complicated. You got a bunch of people from Europe. Yes, from fucking Europe. The vast majority coming in and kicking a bunch of indigenous people off their land. And don't tell me about your fucking possession of that land 25 fucking hundred years ago. Come on, man. Come on. Based on that, There are a multitude of people who have a claim on that land. Oh, but we have monuments there. So do the Romans.
Right.
So do the Greeks. So do the
Exactly.
Persians. Are they all entitled to that land?
Right.
I saw a Zionist making the argument. Do you even know that it was the Romans who named it Palestine for the Philistines who lived there, as if that meant something? Well, the Romans also named Britannia. So are the Italians entitled to Britain? Like, what the fuck is that even? What are you talking about? Oh, well, so it's illegitimate then because the Romans called it that.
Right. Right. She goes on.
Much more that we could go into, as you say, since 1948, but I mean, you could literally go back thousands of years. The important point I want to emphasize, though, is propaganda is not education. Propaganda on whether it's TikTok or in the classroom is actually...
Or maybe on MSNBC, right? Maybe propaganda on TikTok in the classroom or on Morning Joe.
Yeah, that's what's so remarkable about this entire segment. It is just the most substance-free, distorted propaganda. And it is a very revealing segment in showing you really just in a raw form, in that raw form that only people like Joe Scarborough or Hillary Clinton, who never have absolutely no self-awareness or capacity for self-reflection and no notion of humility, that they should not say the soft part out loud in this way. They are so clearly aristocrats lamenting the idea of any narrative other than the approved narrative being allowed to be aired. Even as she later in this segment talks about the horrors of Donald Trump and the threat to democracy, this entire segment is deeply anti-democratic. It is deeply rooted in the idea that only the technocratic, aristocratic class that they represent is entitled to have an opinion. All opinions that vary from that are illegitimate, in spite of how wrong they got a once-in-a-century coup, shall we say.
Opposite of education. Anybody who is teaching in a university or anyone who is putting content on social media should be held responsible for what they include and what they exclude. And so much of what we're seeing, particularly on TikTok, about what's going on in the Middle East is woefully false, but it's also incredibly slanted, pro-Hamas, anti-Israel. And it is, not any place where anyone should go to get information about complex matters like
No, they should go to you.
Right.
They should go to you.
They
should go to you.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. This is Hillary Clinton, who voted for the Iraq War. We're going to drop, I'm doing a supercut of this segment with all of the historic footage that debunks what they're saying. But you can go and very easily find Hillary Clinton's speech in the Senate when she was a senator and they had to vote for the Iraq War, where she reinforces the Bush administration narrative. She says Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction, and if we allow it to go on, his ability to produce those weapons is only going to increase over time. This is a hard vote, but I vote with confidence, she says. So why are you even being listened to? You got the most important decision of your life wrong. You are the cause of slave markets in Libya. That was your wisdom as Secretary of State. By all accounts, you were the decider in that case. You were the one who really persuaded Obama to take out Gaddafi. What do they have now? You can go, I'm going to use this in my supercut. I found this in my research. CNN actually did a report on it showing the slave markets in Libya. That is your legacy. And of course, something that's been floating around lately that we're going to have to get to is apparently in her memoir, she talks very fondly about the fact that the governor's mansion in Arkansas was staffed by some of those prison slaves that we were talking about, the slave labor from the prison. She talks very approvingly about, and she specifically says African American servants, they had slaves. They literally had slaves. But she says, well, I was a little worried to be waking up next to murderers, but I was assured it's a tradition. Wow. I mean, it's just amazing. So now she cares so much about a two-state solution. She really supported democracy. This is what she actually said about the vote that the Palestinian people had in 2006.
I do not think we should have pushed for an election in the Palestinian territories. I think that was a big mistake. And if we were going to push for an election, then we should have made sure that we did something to determine who was going to win.
Okay, so this is Hillary Clinton's idea of democracy in Palestine. They should not have had an election. But, and this is more to the point, this is what you would have gotten under the Clintons. They have elections, but we decide who wins. Just as they did where? In Russia. In Russia. That was how they got that drunk Yeltsin reelected. They put millions of dollars into Russia. Clinton sent his own consultants, his own team to Russia. The election was so crooked, Yeltsin won in Chechnya. Even as Chechnya was being bombed, Yeltsin won in Chechnya. I think was something like 80% of the vote. So that is, if there had been this Palestinian state, which Israel never would have agreed to, and ultimately did not agree to, which is what they're eliding over. If the Clintons had their way, it would be a democracy in name only, exactly as Russia was while they were in charge.
Please clap.